Hello everyone. All right, so in this video what we're going to talk about is how to do a basic graph in Google Sheets. In fact, I'll show you how to do the very first graph for your weather data collection information assignment. So for this graph, what we're going to be doing is making a graph of just our high temperatures. So you can see I'm looking at my own data. This is Miss Berg's data from Tower, Minnesota. So my data is going to look a little bit different than yours just because it's a different location. That doesn't change how you go about making this graph. The very first thing we want to do is we want to select the data we want to graph. In this case, I want to select the date and the high temperatures. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on date, and I'm actually going to hold it down and drag across the data that I want. Now I want the data for both of these first two columns, so I'm going to make sure I select that exact data, including the titles. So I have the date and I have the high in degrees Fahrenheit. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to click on my chart. So if you are working on your computer at home, you can select all this data just by clicking and dragging across the data. If you're having a hard time with that, another thing you can do is select part of your data and then hit Command if you're on a Mac and select the rest of your data, or Control if you're on a regular PC and select the rest of your data. If you're on a device like an iPad or a tablet or a smartphone, I'll show you another way that you can select your data. Either way, once you have your data selected or once you know you're making a chart, you click on this icon here that says Insert Chart. All right, now you can see if I've already selected my data, it already made a graph for me. This is a really neat thing that Google Sheets can do for you. So if you already have that, that's great, but we are not done. This graph is not perfectly set up, and it is not an appropriate scientific graph. So there's a couple things we need to change. For my peeps out there who had a hard time selecting data, this data range box right here is exactly how you will select your data if you are unable to grab or select things from your screen. So if you click on this select data range, what you can do is type in the box range that you need. You can see here that it starts at A5. Now, our rows and columns work exactly the same way as like a coordinate plane or grid does in math. You can see we have A and 5, they meet in this box. That's why it's A5. And so that's telling me that's my first box that I've selected. Now what I can do is I can do A5 to A35 because A35 is my last one in that row. And now I've selected all of that data without even clicking on anything. Now, if I select just that row, that's not enough information. I have to also have my B column. So I would add another range, and I would go B5 and then put a colon to B35. And just like that, my data stays exactly the same, and it'll select all the data that I told it to select. So those are two different ways that you can select your data. Once you're there, we are in business. If this is just a basic graph, we're good to go in this setup, and we're going to go over here to customize. So once you're in customize, you have all these different options, which is sweet. This chart style, we're not going to use it for this video, but we will use it in a later one, just so you know. So don't feel cheated. We'll come back to it. But the first thing we want is this chart and axis titles. So we're going to put a chart title on this so that it's a little more specific. So if someone were to look at this graph, they'd know exactly what they're looking at. So once I click on chart title, I can type in this box exactly what I want the title to be. Now I'm going to choose Tower, Minnesota, because that's my location. I want anybody looking at this graph to know what data they're looking at. And this data specifically is for the city of Tower, Minnesota. And then we're going to look at the high temperatures. And I'm just going to put high temps. Keep it nice and simple for Tower, Minnesota. The dates are already on there, so I don't need to be more specific than that. And just like that, I have my title. Now from here, I can bold my title, I can italicize my title, I can center my title. Wow, there's so many options. And I'm actually going to do all of those. I can even change the text color of my title. So just like that, I've made my title nice and centered and nice and specific for whatever I'm working on. The next thing I can do is I can look at my horizontal axis title. So this has been automatically filled in for me. I selected my title column or my title row where it has date colon, and that's why it says date colon here. So you can keep that if you want. That colon is unnecessary, so I'm going to get rid of it. And I'm just gonna keep it as date because that's pretty specific. I'm gonna bold it, italicize it. That's not necessary, but I like doing that. And just like that, I have my horizontal axis title. Next thing I'm gonna do is put a vertical axis title in there. It says hi in degrees Fahrenheit. That's exactly what I want it to say. That I cannot change. Keep in mind, anytime you have an axis title, if it has a unit, it needs to be in parentheses after you say what you're measuring. So that's why it says hi in degrees Fahrenheit. I'm gonna bold it, italicize it because I like to be consistent. And just like that, boom, I got my titles. Next thing I'm gonna do is there is the series tab. This tab, we don't necessarily need to mess with for this particular graph, but a couple things you might wanna note. The color, if I wanted to change my color to maybe red, because red is usually associated with hot things, then I can change my color there. The axis, I'm gonna leave it the left axis because that's where my high temperature is. Now I can change the point size. You can see right now I don't have a lot of points making a mess of my graph, which I really like. But if you wanna see those data points, you can change those dots and how thick they are on your graph, just like that. Again, I'm not doing that because I think that makes for a messy graph. I like it the way it is without the dots. If you're gonna go dots, I would say 2 times max. You don't need anything other than that. At some point, you can change your point shape. What, you want triangles? Go for it. What, a star? You're a star. That's fun. But again, we don't need that for this graph, so I'm gonna leave mine off. That's all we need for the series this time. I'm gonna close that up. Legend, for this one, we don't need it. We only have 1 line, so don't worry about that. Horizontal axis, if I click on this, there's not a lot I can change about this. I can look at all these things. I can bold it, italicize it. It's not going to do much. But the big thing I want to do here for my horizontal axis, which is my date, is right now I can only see 4 of the dates that are on my, that are part of my data. So I'm going to treat labels as text. And just like that, it's inserted all of those different days, which just makes it a little bit easier to read the graph. And then down here, I can choose how I want to slant my labels. If I want them to be not slanted, then I can change these degrees. I like it being slanted at 90 degrees. It just makes for a nice thinner graph, and that's why I chose that. And that's my horizontal axis. The vertical axis, it looks pretty good, which is great. It already treats my labels as text, which is how I got that high degree Fahrenheit. A cool thing you can do here, if it's needed, is change your minimum and maximum value. We'll be doing that in another video. We don't really need that for this one though. I already have a graph that's taking up most of the space. I'm pretty good to go. And yeah, that's how you do vertical axis. Grid lines are absolutely not necessary. You can see it, there's vertical grid lines, and that's all we're gonna keep. Just like that, I have my beautiful graph. Once you have your graph and you're ready to insert it into your document, you just click on it. It's sometimes easier to click off of your graph than click back on it. And then you can Control Copy or Control C, Command C. However you want to copy and paste this into your Google Slides, you certainly can. It's very easy. I'm just going to hit Command C because I'm working on a Mac. And then if I go over to my weather data collection and I go to my high temperatures where it says create a line graph, I can just click on the space and hit Command V. It'll ask me if I want to paste the chart and I want to link to my spreadsheet or paste unlinked. In this case, we want to paste unlinked. We don't want everything to update or affect my other spreadsheet. And then I hit paste, and whoa, there's my graph, but it's huge. So I'm going to make it a little bit smaller, the way it fits in the space that I have made for you guys. And boom, I am ready to answer my questions. As you're answering these questions, make sure you're interpreting the data from your graph or from your data table. And you can just click in here and you can hit enter and type your answer in that way. You can type your answer in here. All I ask is to change the color of your answer. So if you say blah, 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 then I ask that you change the color of that. It just makes it a lot easier for me to see and grade. You can change it any color that you want as long as I can see it and it stands out. Thank you very much for your time, everybody. I hope you enjoyed that wonderful tutorial. I'll see you for a later video.